they can't afford to lose points to teams around them, let alone teams at the bottom half of the table. Hello and welcome back to the Premier League preview on my channel. There was lots of exciting things going on last week. We had Tuchel's first win as Chelsea manager, Brighton in a shock result beat Spurs, and Manchester City extended their lead at the top of the Premier League with Manchester United dropping points. But there was so much to talk about last week that we can't cover it all here today. So we will move on to next week's fixtures, and we will be looking at Tottenham Hotspur later on in the video, so if you are a Tottenham fan or you're interested in the Tottenham V Chelsea game, be sure to stick around for that. But let's have a look at this week's fixtures. So a fixture I know that is going on this week is Wolves versus Arsenal. I think this is a very important game for Wolves in their season. They are underperforming since the loss of Raul Jimenez. It's always difficult when your main target man gets injured, and that's what they are finding so far this season. Another game is Newcastle versus Crystal Palace. Both teams come into this off the back of what must kind of be a shock win, really. Newcastle were fantastic as they won 2-0. Callum Wilson becoming the 5th Englishman to have scored over 10 goals this season in the Premier League, and Crystal Palace just easing past the aforementioned Wolves. On Wednesday we see Fulham and Leicester, a big game for Leicester if they want to push for the Champions League spots. They can't afford to drop any more points after being beaten 3-1 by Leeds. And the champions Liverpool take on Brighton, which should be an easy game, but like I said earlier, they did just beat Spurs, so everything's to play for. The big game, as I've mentioned this week, is Spurs taking on Chelsea at whatever Spurs' stadium's called now. What is Spurs' stadium called now? So without any further hesitation, let's jump into the players to watch section for this week. The first player I am going to choose this week is Willian Jose, Wolverhampton Wanderers' new signing. The reason I've chosen him is, like I said, the vital importance that Wolves start scoring some goals. They got a draw midweek against Chelsea, which looked like a respectable point, but Wolves, we know they've got quality in their side, but without Jimenez they are lacking a focal point. That is why the transfer of Willian Jose from Real Sociedad has come into fruition, really. He's a big, strong striker, can score plenty of goals, all types of goals with both feet. And that's important in the Premier League, to be able to be dynamic, score with your head, score with your feet, score with whatever you need, really. And against Arsenal, who maybe aren't as defensively strong as they once were, and, you know, there are still a few creaking gaps here and there, Willian Jose could cause some issues, and I think it's important for Wolves this season that he hits the ground running and really starts scoring. They've been reliant so far this season on Podence, Pedro Neto and Fabio Silva. Fabio Silva is still 18-19, so that is a lot of pressure to put on a lad that young. And we saw it years ago with Rashford, we saw it years ago with Martial, the pressure that was put on them. I think this will be a similar thing, and I think it's very good business to have brought in Willian Jose this transfer window, because it takes that pressure off the young lad, and it also takes the pressure off the players who you'd naturally associate being wingers in Podence, Neto, Adama Traore, who maybe aren't as clinical in front of goal but are great at creating chances. The next player I've chosen to watch this week is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Everton come into this game against Leeds United on the back of a 2-0 loss to Newcastle United. A brief side note before we jump into this, my 2-minute Tuesday this week is going to be about Newcastle United. I had a request from a good friend of mine, ActiveArron. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, but I had a request from him to talk about that during a 2-minute Tuesday, so I will be doing that. I'll be talking about why Newcastle fans believe Steve Bruce should be sacked. But back to Everton and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Everton were disappointing this weekend with a Newcastle side that were looking good, and they were looking good in front of goal. Everton, on the other hand, without Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goals, it hasn't been an easy breeze for them. And Calvert-Lewin hasn't scored in, I think, 5-6 matches, which I don't think is a cause for concern by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at, and which is why I've chosen him this week as the player to watch. We know what Dominic Calvert-Lewin can bring. Now, thanks to the great work of Duncan Ferguson and Carlo Ancelotti, they've transformed him into a fantastic attacking outlet. And we haven't really seen that in the last few weeks. He's been injured for a couple of weeks as well, which may have stunted his growth as a footballer a little bit. But I don't think it'll have done too much for him. I think it's just about getting his head back in the game, making sure he can score the goals again. The goals will come for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's always in the right position. He just needs to take the most of the chances. And against this Leeds United team, you'll need Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison and James Rodriguez to be creating plenty of chances. Otherwise, you're really going to struggle. I say that every week against Leeds United, but if you don't create chances yourself, Leeds United are bound to score with the 25-30 shots they can have in a game. The final player to watch this week, and the moment we've all been waiting for, is talking about Chelsea and Spurs. Specifically Spurs. How are Spurs going to cope with Chelsea without Harry Kane? The player to watch is obviously Heung-min Son. I think it's important to look at because Spurs lost to Brighton and they've got a big game against Chelsea, and if they want to be title challengers and they want to be challenging for top four, they can't afford to lose points to teams around them, let alone teams at the bottom half of the table. We all know that the qualities that Harry Kane has, he's able to link up the play. He's almost playing like a false nine this season as well. 10 goals, 11 assists or vice versa is an incredible stat for someone who people said was one-dimensional, only scored goals and was selfish. Heung-min Son is the important player though that they need to get the best out of. Spurs haven't had the greatest recent history against Chelsea in the Premier League. I remember, was it Kieran Trippier did a fantastic own goal? Well, Willian turned into prime Ronaldinho. That's something that Spurs really have to look into, is how can we stop this Chelsea side? Because it seems to be in recent years that this game is a one-off game and it doesn't matter how well Chelsea are playing, they can beat Spurs. With Harry Kane missing though, I would assume the team will flow a lot more dynamically. I think Spurs will have a lot more interchangeable forwards. I don't know if Lucas Moura will be playing, but especially with Bergwijn, Bale and Son, I'm sure they'll interchange, which could cause problems for Thiago Silva. But if Harry Kane was to play, he is the linchpin to that attacking midfield, and he almost drops in so that Bergwijn, Son or whoever you want to say moves round them. We've seen in recent years that Spurs almost play better without Harry Kane, but they don't score as much, which is almost a problem in itself. And I do think they'll give it a good shot. I think off current form, I'd probably say Spurs are still the favourites, even without Harry Kane. That concludes this week's Premier League preview. If you have enjoyed, be sure to subscribe to this channel. I'm trying to hit 150 subscribers by the end of February. So I will see you later and stay safe. Cheers.